Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my ESPN Top 25. This is basically just the ESPN Top 25, but altered to my liking. So, if you have your own opinion on your top 25, go ahead and let me know in the comments. I love to read comments. Um, and yeah, a like and subscribe would help. A comment always helps. And let's get straight into this. So, my first team at number one, although I wasn't impressed with this team on week one, they still took care of business and they should not be dropped pretty much until they lose, in my opinion. Georgia's two-time national championship winner, multiple times. Last year, did they get knocked out of their spot just to reclaim it in the end, and multiple times throughout the season. To be honest, I don't think this Georgia team should drop ever until they lose. I really just don't think they should drop ever until they lose. There's no reason to. The world is going to go against this Georgia team, but there should be no reason for them to drop. They didn't impress me in their game against UT Martin. They were just not that. They were not that impressive. Ultimately, they didn't shut them out. Yes, I get UT Martin, whatever, a touchdown. I mean, they scored with 6 minutes and 39 seconds left. Ultimately, this Georgia team looks to have a solid defense, but the scary part was they were going into halftime against this team up 17-0, which is like certain teams like Oregon were going into halftime up 50-7 or something like that. They were going in 17-0. They figured it out in the rest of the game. I mean, a touchdown did end up coming from a pick six. Final score really should have been 7-41 had UT Martin not done that. But still, they took care of business. There's no major takeaways other than this Georgia team will definitely be the number one team, like, solidly. Like, it would not be a doubt in my mind if they can get this quarterback to provide what Stetson Bennett was providing last year and in 2021. If they can get that, then they will be the number one team officially. But since they don't do that, I'm still questionable on this team. However, there is no reason for them to drop as two-time national championship winner. You just can't do that. At number two, we have Michigan. Michigan, they beat East Carolina pretty easily, 30-3, which I think East Carolina kicked that. Yeah, they kicked that field goal with no time left just to make it so they didn't get shut out. J.J. McCarthy, he was great. 26 for 30, 280 yards and 3 touchdowns. He only missed 4 passes, 3 touchdowns. Blake Corum, course, he was great. We all know he was great. 10 carries, 73 yards, and 1 touchdown. I mean, he didn't really get a whole lot of carries, and within that, he was averaging pretty much like 7 yards a carry. So that's really good. This Michigan team, really, they just shouldn't. There should be no reason for this team to be moved anywhere. They didn't. I mean, 30 points is. I thought East Carolina was going to stand more of a chance, and I think I wasn't the only person to think that. But really, realistically, they got shut out. They kicked a field goal with no time left to make it so they didn't. But in reality, they got shut out. Michigan's defense held them. Their offense was, like, rolling. Michigan's a good team. They should not be moved. Number 3, we have Bama. I agree with this. You know, I feel like it'd be everybody's first intention to put FSU in third place. But really, what did Alabama do to be surpassed by somebody? They took care of business against Middle Tennessee. I know it's Middle Tennessee, but hey, they took care of business. Jalen Milroe, I think, to start off the game, took a botched snap and took it into the end zone. You know, he definitely had a better game. Here's the crazy thing, though. Here's the crazy stat for Jalen Milroe. He was 13 for 18, 194 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He threw 18 passes, 13 of which he completed, and within that, he fit in 3 touchdowns and 194 yards. That's pretty impressive, all right? That's pretty impressive. He was also the leading rusher. He had 7 carries for 48 yards and 2 touchdowns. So this Jalen Milroe guy, you know, forgetting all for basically being the main reason why people are saying Alabama's done, Alabama's falling apart. He's really looked impressive. We still are yet to see this team enter into, a tough matchup. I mean, we will see it this week. So that is something definitely to look forward to. But if Jalen Milroe, just destroys Texas or even just plays good in the game, this Bama team is probably going to, in my eyes, this Bama team stands a better chance than Georgia to win the national championship, just because we know Alabama's got a spectacular defense, per usual. They've got loaded talent on offense, just like Georgia. They're in the same boat. However, both teams are using a new quarterback, and it looks to me like Jalen Milroe is just more advanced. That's why I'm giving the edge to Bama here. So, yeah, I don't see why they shouldn't be ranked at number 3. They will be a good team this year. Number 4, FSU. I agree with this pick. I think it's kind of weird, so I don't really know what these votes mean on ESPN Top 25. It's got 58 votes. I'm assuming they're votes to Georgia's name, 2 votes to Michigan's name, none to Alabama, and 3 to FSU. I don't know what that means, but I think that might be for number 1, which I just don't agree with. Yes, they absolutely dominated LSU. They absolutely dominated them. They looked fantastic. I feel like the main takeaway for FSU was, honestly, it was not their quarterback, really. It was whoever number 14 was, dude. That guy was just, I swear, watching the whole game, he was catching every single ball, and it kind of just hit me. I was like, dude, number 14 was a dog. Obviously, Jordan Travis was really good. He's in the Heisman run right now, in my opinion, and he was great. The Florida State defense was great. There were multiple people, but I say number 14, the wide receiver or whatever, bro, he was really, really, really good, man. Jordan Travis in the game against LSU went 23 for 31, 342 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Their running back had 12 carries for 47 yards, nothing crazy. And ultimately, Florida State just dominated. They had a lot of penalties, which were the only thing bringing them down. And right now, this Florida State team is probably in the run for the national championship. In my eyes, the only team I see standing in the way of Florida State is North Carolina. That's it. In my prediction video for the ACC, I said FSU would upset Clemson on the road, quote-unquote upset, and then later in the season, North Carolina would do the same to Clemson on the road, and it'd be FSU versus North Carolina meeting for the first time this season in the ACC championship. North Carolina will be the only team standing in the way of this FSU team. And I think I stand by that more considering Clemson looked terrible in the Duke game. They could not get that ball in the end zone. However, we'll get to Clemson later. Florida State is definitely, they've got a solid defense, as we saw. They held plenty of people had Jaden Daniels potentially in the Heisman run. Florida State held this dude to just 17 points. So FSU's defense looks great. Their offense obviously looks great. Jordan Travis is probably tied for number 1 in the Heisman race. And ultimately, they're just a very, very good team this year. Definitely fit in the top 4. Number 5, we have Ohio State. I would love to put this team lower, but I can't because of the team after. Obviously, I literally made a whole video on this team and how they played against Indiana. They looked awful. Their defense looked fantastic, but their offense, for having the best wide receiver duo in the nation, they sucked. And ultimately, if their quarterback can provide the stats that they need to activate that wide receiver duo, then Ohio State jumps right back into the top 4. But we didn't see that against Indiana. They have to play Michigan this year, at Michigan. They have to play Penn State. They have to play, I think, at Maryland. There's a lot of tough games for this Ohio State team to play. I could very well see this team being a 3-loss team. However, they didn't lose. They held Indiana to just 3 points, and it's only the first game of the year. I feel like knocking them down to number 5 is a respectable spot for them. I would put them down one more, but sadly, the team that's in at number 6, or not my number 6, so we'll get on to them later. We're going to talk about Penn State right now. Penn State looked great. Penn State hasn't been able to be that good team because of one thing. It was their quarterback. They didn't have a quarterback. But now with this Drew Aller guy stepping in, he looked really good. He looked really good. I saw that pass when he stepped up in the pocket and just let one fly down the field. I was kind of like stunned by the throw. It was like stepping up into like a crowded pocket and just letting one fly with power. I was like, wow, this quarterback could be very good. The quarterback, his stats were very good. He was 21 for 29, 325 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He only didn't complete 8 passes. And then, of course, you have the beast of a running back. When does Penn State not have a beast running back? Nicholas Singleton. He was 13 carries for 70 yards and a touchdown. That's only 13 carries. And then you have Keandre Lambert Smith, who was obviously the favorite target in just 4 receptions. He was the favorite target, in my opinion, in just 4 receptions. He had, I don't know how many targets he had, but he caught the ball 4 times for 123 yards and 2 touchdowns. This Penn State offense is loaded, whereas they held West Virginia to pretty much just 7 points throughout the whole game. You know, West Virginia punched, God, I can't stop burping. West Virginia punched on a touchdown and a 2-point conversion with 3 minutes left. It was 7-31. But then you know what? Penn State punched on a touchdown with 6 seconds left, which was kind of questionable, but it looks like they did it with a backup. So those, I would say, kind of cancel out in a way. However, it's still nonetheless, it's a much better final score than it was at halftime. Penn State's defense held this team to very little points throughout the game. They really probably only allowed points because they had their second strings in, but they dominated offensively. Why wouldn't this team go up? Why wouldn't this team be ranked at number 6, if anything? And honestly, I would love to, at number 5. However, I just feel like Ohio State can't knock them down like that. They still play great on defense and whatnot, and they still have more to prove. However, it was no question bumping them up against never mind. It was no question bumping Washington over our next team. You know what? I really knocked this team down, and I'm happy with myself. I'm just proving myself right every second. Honestly, I've talked about this team. I don't know if or that's a video that I need to edit still and fix. Ultimately, Washington looked fantastic. They had a very slow first quarter. Boise State would score a touchdown going up 6-0 in the first quarter. Washington didn't score any points. Just for Michael Penix Jr. to score 28 points in the second quarter, and then Boise State would kick 2 field goals, making it 12-28 going into halftime. Boise State would open up the third quarter with a 50-yard touchdown pass, and that would be the last time they see points. Washington would score a touchdown, and then in the third quarter, touchdown. Michael Penix Jr., if I saw one thing and one thing only in this game, it was that he had infinite options down the field. I know it's Boise State and whatnot. I still think highly of Boise State, but they are a group of 5 team. But the fact that Michael Penix just had multiple opportunities to heave the ball deep, and he was even missing throws and whatnot, shows how powerful this offense is. And they have a strong defense. They allowed 19 points from Boise State, one to pretty much open up the first quarter, then 2 field goals from distance, and then a 50-yard touchdown play. All right, against a group of 5 teams, San Jose State dropped 28 points on USC. Washington played a better team than San Jose State and held them to just that. Michael Penix Jr. was 29 for 40, 450 yards and 5 touchdowns. Their running back, I don't even know if this is their starting running back. It's his name is Will Nixon. I don't think that's even their starting running back, but he was 6 carries, 48 yards. And then the receiver who seemed to be like Mr. Do-It-All for Michael Penix was Roma Dunze. I could not stop hearing this guy's name during the game. 7 receptions, 132 yards, and a touchdown. This is a very high-power offense and a strong defense. And this is my other quarterback that's tied for number 1 in the Heisman race. It was no question that I ranked him above our number 8 team, USC. What I have noticed from this USC team is that they are just all offense, no defense. And with that being said, I even like Florida State's defense more, or offense more. I like Washington's offense more. I like Penn State's offense more. This offense has done nothing to impress me. Again, like I said, they put up 56 points against San Jose State, whereas San Jose State put down 28. Washington put up 56 points against Boise State, and Boise State only put up 19. So already you could just use that as knowledge. 2 teams in the same conference, Boise State arguably better. Washington's handled them better than USC could handle the weaker opponent. You could use that logic in some world, but obviously that's very flawed information and whatnot. However, this USC offense just really hasn't impressed me. But Nevada was one of the worst teams in the league last year, right? And then I think the worst team was New Mexico. Nevada put down 14 points. That you just can't see that ultimately. And honestly, the score was even closer in that game. I feel like USC ran up the score in the end. Look at going into the fourth quarter, it was 7-42. And then USC they put down 24 points in the fourth quarter to give us the final score, 66-14. Where they also allowed a 77-yard pass from Nevada. Like, what? This just is not an impressive team. The only recognizable person on the team is Caleb Williams. He was 18 for 24, 319 yards, and 5 touchdowns. He did great. He's the only recognizable person on this team for me right now. Other than that, there's nothing going for this USC team. There's no defense. There's no, other names that I see. All I see is Caleb Williams. They're not good. I think they will finish off a 3-4 loss team this year. Number 9, we have Tennessee. Tennessee, ultimately, in my opinion, looked tied for the best. Of course, tied with Alabama in the SEC. They are tied for the best-looking team in the SEC. They absolutely handled Virginia as expected. There is really nothing to be said here other than this Tennessee team should be where they are. A lot of people complained about how Tennessee was 3 spots under Clemson. I was in that same argument as well, and suddenly Tennessee's taken their place. So that got solved pretty fast. And ultimately, this Tennessee team just looks solid. They played Virginia. I don't know who they play now. They play Austin Peay this week, so that's a cakewalk before they have to go on the road to Florida. So, yeah. Number 10, Notre Dame. I didn't want to rank this Notre Dame team over Tennessee because Tennessee just didn't do anything to deserve that. They both played fantastic. However, I think Sam Hartman is in a good, probably 3rd place for the Heisman. He's probably in a good 3rd place. He looked great in both of his games. I mean, he hasn't really played anybody recognizable yet. He's going to play NC State on the road this year, or this week, and that will be, I guess, his first sort of test. However, NC State did struggle against UConn. Still think it'll be his first test. Number 10 seems, I cannot stop burping. This is ridiculous. Number 10 seems like a good spot for Notre Dame. All right. Now we get on to our number 11, who we've got, Texas. I think Texas, they really struggled in their first half of the game against Rice. However, they really put it together in the second half, and one big takeaway for this team was that their defense looks very, 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 very good. One of the best defenses in the league. It's kind of funny how we're looking at college football, which is typically very offensive, and it's kind of flipped on its head. I feel like a lot of teams are showing very strong defenses now. So I think they haven't really done anything to lose their place. It was looking like they would, but then they got it together. The only takeaway I'm going to have is that sketchy first half. Number 12, I have Oregon. Personally, I like this Oregon team more than I like this Utah team. Yes, Utah was taking care of business against Florida, but without Cam Rising, they really struggled. And ultimately, Oregon dropped 81 points on Portland State with their starters and with their backups. So this Oregon team is stacked, absolutely stacked out of their mind. I was very low on this team when I should have been very high on this team. And ultimately, I think they're just going to do better than Utah. I just think that's how it is. And then at 13, we have Utah, like I was saying. I mean, a final score of 24-11 against Florida is kind of disappointing. I feel like they had so much more room to just put on points and win the game. And ultimately, this could be one of the worst Florida teams. This could be the worst team in the SEC that they just played, even worse than Vanderbilt, or I'd say Missouri. They probably will be the worst team in the SEC unless they put things together. And they only won by 13 points. Yes, starting quarterback's out, but you know what? Like, if I just look at it like, well, if your backups can't do it, what if Cam Rising does get knocked out again? Then all of a sudden, Utah's out of the question. They're a bad team. But if Cam Rising does come in, he should be able to activate the offense more. Utah's got a very solid defense, and yeah. I'm just going to swap them with Oregon because that's my personal take. Number 14, we have LSU. I feel like you can't drop this team too much, and 14 was like the precise spot. I was going to be livid if they put them at number 10 or something, but they put them at 14, which was respectable. That was where I was thinking in my mind they should be placed. It's a respectable spot for LSU. They lost to Florida State handily. They were in the game. And, they were up going into the half, but they just fell apart in the second half. Ultimately, Florida State stopped giving them free penalties, a big turnover by Jaden Daniels, and the Florida State defense locked down that offense, and the Florida State offense just outwitted the LSU defense. LSU will probably remain in this territory for the remainder of the season. I have them going a 2-loss team this year with a loss to Florida State and to Bama. Those are my 2 losses for LSU. So they'll probably sit in this spot for the rest of the season. This is a good spot. Number 15, Kansas State. I don't really agree with this team. I'd rather have another team up here. However, this team doesn't really deserve to be moved. They shut out a bad team. They did what they needed to do, and there's still no solid interpretation of what this team is capable of. So I feel like they should only move up because Clemson went down. Simply said. Number 16, Oregon State. Totally agree with this. This Oregon State defense is so solid. And if DJ can put the offensive ability in the game, this Oregon State team becomes my favorite for the Pac-12, honestly. Probably fighting for it against Washington or their rival Oregon. Oregon State, dude, they have such a good defense. I mean, really, if you look at last season, they lost 2 games by 30 points. If they had DJ in last season, they would have been a 1-loss team. With that even being said, in that Utah game where they got crushed, 16-42, all 4 of Oregon State's interceptions thrown led to points by Utah, 28 points to be precise. With that being said, if DJ doesn't make those turnovers, doesn't make those mistakes, Oregon State's still up 16-14. And who's to say they don't score on those drives? That's all I have to say about this Oregon State team. They've returned a whole heap and load of talent, and now they've got a quarterback who could potentially get things done. This is a really good Oregon State team. They could go undefeated for a while. Then we have North Carolina. They absolutely took care of business against South Carolina in a game a lot of people had South Carolina winning. I had North Carolina winning this game in a closer one. Ultimately, it was North Carolina's defense that was the one to stop. They absolutely shut down that run game. Spencer Rattler had a good game through the air. However, they just were not able to score points. But the question here is Drake May looked a little inconsistent. He looked good, but he looked inconsistent. So I can't really move him anywhere else until until I see Drake May be consistent. Then we have Oklahoma. 73-0 speaks for itself. This team can't be dropped, simply. Wisconsin, I had them struggling against Buffalo. I kind of defended myself, but 38-17 it's still a good final score. That's only 4 points away from what Oregon State did to San Jose State, so I can't hate on them for that. They shouldn't be moved. Ole Miss, again, 73-7 speaks for itself. They really shouldn't be moved. Sorry I flew through those ones, but really those are just unaltered opinions. They can't be moved judged off of my opinion. Tulane, I have them at 21. Personally, I feel like the win, not only the win, but the domination over South Alabama speaks very well for Tulane. I really like this quarterback, Michael Pratt. Here's a fantastic stat. He was 14 for 15 through the air. He only didn't complete one pass. He threw for 294 yards and 4 touchdowns. That's better than Caleb Williams. That's almost better than Jordan Travis. It's almost better than Michael Penix. I'd say he's number 2 for the Heisman for me. I'd say he's number 2. The South Alabama wasn't even bad either. Their quarterback was 23 for 30, 190 yards and a touchdown. However, he just threw 2 interceptions, which ultimately led to Tulane kicking their rum. I think this Tulane is underranked. They will be playing this Ole Miss team at Tulane. Ole Miss is favored by 7 points. That's a gimme game in my opinion. I'm going to bet on that. I'm betting on Tulane. But yeah, I think Tulane is a better team than Ole Miss. However, I still have Ole Miss ranked above them. I don't think Ole Miss deserves to be D-ranked. And Tulane's coming up from number 24 to 21. Number 22, I have Colorado over Duke. I feel like the only reason Duke got ranked above Colorado was because they just beat a higher-ranked opponent and by more. However, I disagree. I think TCU is a better team than Clemson, and the win speaks more for especially for Colorado. Their team showed extreme strength as well as Travis Hunter was just fantastic on both ends of the ball. They've got so much talent compared to Duke. Duke really struggled. Obviously the final score 28-7 is different. Clemson was just playing terrible football. Ultimately, though, Duke really had a hard time moving the ball for a while. They really only put it together at the end of the game. Like, if you look at the stats of the game, Duke really only punched in those points at the end. They were up 13-7 with 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter, or 11 minutes, I guess. Before they finally scored a touchdown, they were only up 21-7, and then they punched in their final touchdown with 3 minutes left. It was just Clemson kept churning the damn ball over. However, Duke kept churning the ball over too. They fumbled the ball twice. Ultimately, Clemson gave away 5 possessions. They turned the ball over 3 times, and they failed to convert 2 fourth downs, whereas Duke only gave away the ball twice on 2 fumbles. They converted their only 4th down. That's the difference, in my opinion. That's the entire difference. I'm like, Duke didn't even play that good. I just think Duke is going to be ranked because Clemson was ranked in the top 25. Number 24, I have A&M. They played a Pee-wee school. They absolutely slaughtered them, as they should. I just don't think they did really much to impress. I'd just rather have Tulane up. And then number 25, Clemson. Feel like it's just very difficult to go from number 9 to unranked. It's a little unfair. I agree with the committee for keeping them in the top 25. I agree entirely, and ultimately, yeah. Clemson played like dog shit in their game, but they definitely showed offensive strength and ability to drive the ball. Had they not made so many mistakes, so many terrible mistakes, they would have won the game handily, honestly. For instance, they were right on that goal line when the ball just flew right out of the running back's hands, and Duke took it all the way to the 40. So, yeah, Clemson just played terrible. If they can put things together, all of a sudden they're right back in the top 15 teams. And now, honestly, like, you know what? I was talking about it earlier with Florida State and North Carolina beating Clemson on the road. Clemson's now number 25, and these two teams are going to be the heavy favorites. Clemson could be a dark horse. They could pull some crazy shit now. They've got the whole world turned their backs against them. This is where teams peak. We saw it last year with Texas A&M. Texas A&M was ranked number 6. They lost to Appalachian State. Whole world turned their backs on them. And then what did they do to LSU? They kicked their rum. And they almost beat Alabama too. So that's my top 25. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you don't agree with me, let me know in the comments. If you have your own top 25, let me know in the comments. Like and subscribe would always help. And that's all for me. Adios.